Hey guys, so I wanted to touch on a topic tonight that all of us have probably struggled with, or maybe currently struggle with, and if you don't or haven't, you probably will in the future, and that is fear-based decision making hindering our progress. So let's relate this to fitness or bodybuilding or coaching clients, right? So I get a new client that comes in, they have some kind of problem, right? Maybe they want to gain muscle and their programming isn't working. Maybe it did in the past, but perhaps it's not now, or they have a functional health issue or something like that. They are going to give me their information. I'm going to give them some kind of feedback. Of course, my feedback's probably going to be different than what they're currently doing, since what they're currently doing isn't working. But I am potentially met with resistance. So the amount of resistance I'm met with is probably going to vary depending on how much different my feedback is, or how severe this problem is, perhaps. And also, is what they're doing now currently rooted in addiction or trauma? Is that altering their decision making as to maybe over exercising or whatever it is, if it's a functional issue? So all these things could potentially amplify the amount of resistance that I get from them. So let's use maybe a more extreme example to make this really clear. Perhaps the client is a functional client. They're at the end of their rope, right? If you've coached a lot of functional clients, you get these, right? They've worked with other coaches, they've done everything, right? Or even maybe they've worked with you for a while, and you've met them in the middle as much as you can, and you've compromised as much as you can, but they still are kind of avoiding the real solution, perhaps, whatever that might be. You're trying to compromise, you're trying to do as much as you can, and walk them up, right? But they haven't quite got there. So you reach that point, and they know that their behaviors and their actions are going against them. They're potentially allowing them not to progress, or even making the issue worse and worse and worse over time. And this has been acknowledged, right? They know. So you come to this point where you have two paths, and I use this example with my mentorship clients a lot. Path A is my potential solution, right? This requires them to change. It's going to be uncomfortable, and it's not the discomfort that you normally think, because this person can diet hardcore and they can train super hard, and they never miss a meal. That's what a lot of people think about suffering or discomfort. It's not that type. It's the type that this is way out of their comfort zone, because it goes against everything that their habits. It goes against their addiction. It goes against these things, right? So that's path A. Path A heals them. Path A takes a lot of discomfort, and path A takes time and doing things differently, right? So path B is them continuing to go down their same path, right? Path B leads to them potentially getting worse and worse and worse, till either A, they give in eventually, or B, they get so bad that they just live a really poor quality of life forever, perhaps. So at this point, this is where the fear-based decision making really, really, really becomes evident, right? Because you only have one good option, right? This isn't like, oh, I don't want to weigh my food, so I'm not going to do it. So, I'm not going to get results. It's like, okay, maybe that's just not important to them. And I wouldn't call that a illogical decision. Maybe it seems illogical to you because it's what you would do. It's not what you would do, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's illogical. But this, A, heals you, B, makes your quality of life really poor, or potentially leads to more deleterious health outcomes. That is a decision that could potentially, you probably classify as illogical. So my point in all this is that we need to be aware of what our decisions are driven by, and we are emotional creatures. It is sometimes difficult to separate logic and separate emotion, but sometimes we need to step back. If we're consulting with someone like a coach that's very objective, they should be helping you with this. You have to understand that that's a non-biased perspective. If you're doing it yourself, like, write a list, pros and cons list, write it down, like, put it on paper, let yourself look at it, not just think about it, look at it on paper. You see, oh man, that's a lot of cons. The pros are pretty good. The cons are potentially really, really bad. So, you need an outlet sometimes, and you need a way to make these decisions. And maybe that's a behavioral therapist, maybe that's a pros and cons list, maybe that's a coach, whatever it might be. Just understand that these decisions can be, or these fear-based decisions can be unconscious, right? It's automatic because you're continuing an addiction, you're continuing a behavior that was based out of trauma, you're continuing just something that's just purely habitual, right? Or you're just scared because it sounds difficult, right? So there's a lot of factors that play into it, but always remember that when you're making these tough choices.